Welcome everyone to another great episode of the Model Frontier. We now have Pack 8 of Agora models Build the Titanic. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. That way you don't miss a second of any of this great content. So the last couple of packs, we've kind of been focusing on the interior of the ship. We've been focusing in on the engine room and building the engines and making those work well. While we're going to finish that up today, we're also going to move on to the deck of the Titanic. So for the first time in a couple of packs, we're finally going to get to see that lovely symbol, which means we've got some modifications to do. And since it hasn't been said in the last couple packs, I am going to just give you this little disclaimer here that I do not take any responsibility if you decide to take any of these modifications and try them on your own model. And Agora, Hachette, whichever manufacturer or distributor you're going with, are under no obligation to replace parts that you damage trying any of the modifications I do. I take no responsibility. I happen to think I can do what I'm doing. I've done research, I've taken precautions, and I'm willing to absorb the risk. If you think you can do it, go for it. It's up to you. It's your model. Do with it what you want. So without further ado, I think it's time we should go back to Titanic. But first, we have to answer our Titanic trivia question from Pack 7. If you remember correctly, that question is, in which ship was Titanic bandmaster Wallace Hartley's body returned to Britain? Was it A, the Arabic, B, the Olympic, or C, the Californian? The answer to that is A. Wallace Hartley's body was returned on the Arabic to Britain. Okay, so here we are at the start of stage 39, and we're working on this section of our engines. We're going to be adding a few things to these here. Before we do, though, our first Titanic trivia question for the day. How many bodies was it necessary to bury at sea from the Mackie Bennett? The Mackie Bennett was the ship that went to recover bodies from the disaster. So how many of those had to be buried at sea? Was it A, 85, B, 116, or C, 206? You'll get your answer, of course, in stage 40. So the first thing they want us to do is they want us to take these, I guess they're calling them grips, and they want us to fit these over these 7 sets, these 7 parts right here. Now it is important to note, there are 2 sides to these, a flat side and a side with a little square here. They want the flat side down. And yes, they do want one right in this section. I'm not sure exactly why, but they do want one here. They did put 2 of them into this parts bag here, so make sure you get them all. Once we get those into position, we're going to hold them all down with AP screws, which is why we've got so many of them here. Now, luckily, because they're P screws, we don't have to put them in any oil. Now that we've got that done, we're going to move on to this section of the engines. The first thing they want us to do is they want us to take this part you might remember us doing. So as I say, you might remember this part we did a couple issues ago. And we're going to put it in right where you would think. Now, you might need to use a little glue to hold it in place, but I don't think you will. It's just really a push to fit. This section goes in the middle here, and it's a very tight squeeze, so don't be afraid to put a little pressure on it. It's a flush. And then these two pipes go into the giant pipes we've already set up. So, like I said, they will just kind of sit in there. Yeah, that's not going anywhere, so we really don't need to glue that at all. Now our next piece is going to be a little tricky. We have the central walkway to add in. It's going to connect the two engines, so they want us to see how it fits. And basically what we're going to do is, it's really hard to show, but there are grooves down in here that we're going to put these into. And you want the stairs facing forward. So let's just go ahead and try fitting this in here. This is going to be a tight squeeze again. Oops. Yeah, it's going to be tricky with these pipes. Hang on, I got to get closer in here and take a look. Alright, got it in on that side. Got it in on that side. And you just gotta get the staircases to go into their holes. Alright, we got that in place, and I don't know about you, but it kind of feels like these engines will hold those into position pretty well. I'm just going to do a quick test real quick to make sure that when the engines move, it doesn't knock anything out. Nope, not even a wiggle. So, again, glue if you want, but I don't think I'm going to need to put any glue on that. I think that's going to stick pretty good. So, I am going to live a little dangerously, and we're going to leave it just like that. I mean, it says no glue is needed, and I can see why, because those engines kind of keep it right in place. This next section, however, we will need glue. Because we've got sets of parts that we have to put in on both the port side and the starboard side. So I'm going to move this up for a minute here, and we're going to take a look at these parts we got. So these are the parts we're working with. Now, they obviously look very similar, so we're going to separate them into two different piles. Actually, they are identical, so we're going to have to put them into position. Now, we're going to start, I think, with this engine, which I believe is the port side. So, if we're starting on the port side, we're going to start on the port side here, because it's easier to show you, and we're going to start in the back with this piece. This piece is going to go so this piece goes into the two holes, kind of cat-cornered. There's one in the very back. I'll try to get a pair of tweezers to show it to you. You have one in the very back right here and one here. And that's where this is going to go. So we're going to take our glue, I'm going to put it on the pegs. And we're going to get our piece, we're going to grab our tweezers, we're going to get it down in there. Stand by. Actually, the instructions have a printing mistake. Or I'm making a mistake. Hold on, stand by. It goes on like that. So I think they may have made a printing mistake on this. I'm gonna take that out for a second and check. Because this next piece is supposed to go in front of it. Yeah, because it fits in the back one. Okay, so we're going to go in a different order because they did make a printing error on this. So the first piece we're going to actually work with is this piece, and we're going to put this in first. The end that goes on the bottom is this end here that has a little ring on it. You want that to be on the bottom side. And it's gonna go, so it's gonna go in this back hole here. It's gonna go behind there, and the other end fits into the hole on the engine here. Once we get that in place, we're gonna give that a second to set. Now we'll put this piece back in place. Now the next piece we're going to put in is going to be this thing here, and it's got a D shape, so it will only fit one way into this next hole here. Put some glue around the peg with my tweezers, and we're going to get it into position. And just like before, it's going to go behind this pipe here that's sticking out. So all these things are going to go behind the one pipe that we got sticking out. Now our third piece, as you might guess, this one's obviously going to go in front of the pipe. And again, it's got a D-shaped hole. It can only go in one way. So we're going to put our glue on our peg. And we're going to glue that into place. Okay, so now we got those details into place. Obviously, you can imagine they want you to do this on the opposite side. In the same set. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do everything on this side, and then I'm going to go off camera and do things on the opposite side. So next, we have to take this part here, and they want us to fit it in to this. Now, this piece is going to fit onto this, and then this is going to fit into that hole. So I would put my glue onto this peg here, and a little bit on that peg there. And we'll start by fitting the peg that goes into this hole first, and the other peg should kind of get on board with it. And it does. Now that's connected. And then after you get that done on both sides, the last thing they want you to do is on the back, they want you to put the cover on. So just like we did on this side engine, we're going to do the same thing on this side. Put some glue on the pegs. We're going to put it into place. And that's it. So when you get this done on the other side and you put that piece on, that is all there is for stage 39. So here we are starting stage 40, and we start off with something really exciting. Yes, we are doing the propellers. Now, the Agora supplied ones are metal, which is really cool. However, we're going to talk about these propellers for a minute here. So, specifically, we're talking the central one. Now, obviously, everyone's seen the movie Titanic, and everyone sees that it has a 4-bladed central propeller. And that's fine. You know, that's how I've seen this propeller since 5th grade. This is how I've always thought of it. And, you know, if you like it like that, that's fine. But there is plenty of evidence to support the notion of a 3-bladed central propeller, which I've got here. Now, this is from the KA kit. This is a resin propeller, which I have painted to be the right colors. And of course, I do have the other two. Now, I'm going to go over these two in a minute here, but we're talking the central one first. So this is another case, like with the engine room, of preference. Do you prefer the feel and the look of the metal 4-bladed propeller, or do you want to say a 3-bladed one was probably the real thing? I've gone back and forth on this issue a lot, but I've decided I'm going with the 3-bladed propeller. Now, taking a look at the propellers here, you can see the KA set gives you a lot of detail on the propellers, whereas these, there's detail there, but they're not the most right detail. There are some rivet marks on this, but they're not as good as the rivets. I don't know if you can see them on that, but they're not as good as the rivets in this. So I'm going to actually, and you know, these ones are just a little bit bigger, which are more likely the right size for this. So I'm actually going to be using these ones the KA kit ones to do this part. Again, these are totally your call. Whatever you want to do, feel free to do it. If you do use these parts, though, the kit parts, make sure you paint the center part red, because it did have the same anti-fouling paint color as the middle of these propellers did come with the same anti-fouling paint color as the rest of the ship. So if you're painting yours like I have been, just make sure you match it. So now we're going to have to determine what propellers go where. So we got 3 of these, 2 shorts and 1 long. Now obviously the central propeller is going to go on the longer one. And there's no real difference as to how it goes, so now obviously this one's not going to fit on here right now, so we are going to just go with theirs just because it will, well, it doesn't even really, this one don't even really fit on there securely, but you don't want it to be secure anyway. But we will be just using this for the demonstration purposes, but just note that when we go to put these ones on, I will be somehow using this central propeller. Matter of fact, I'm gonna stuff my central propeller with some blue tack so I can put it on here. Yeah, so I'll do that. I'm stuffing my central propeller with blue tack, and we're gonna put that on there. The key thing is you don't glue it down yet. You want to be able to take these off. Why? Because eventually we're going to have to take them off to put them into the wings, and if you glue them down now, you ain't going to be able to get them off without breaking a propeller. So you got that there. Now, when we're looking at these 2 propellers, they go the opposite way. So they go in opposite directions from each other. So if we're looking at this, it looks like we're looking at it like this. Yeah, we're looking at it like this. It's tough to describe it, but basically the propellers do go in opposite directions. And again, there's no real difference in how they can go on. Now, these ones are going to be a good fit on here, so do not be afraid to use a little pressure to get them on there. Again, we're not gluing any of these down. So now we got the propellers on the shafts. We're going to need to go get our engine room again. So we're working on this side of the engine room, and obviously we're going to put the propellers in to our engine. So since these are D-shaped, they do only go in one way. Obviously, we're going to put the wing propellers in the way they go. And the central propeller, you're going to feed through the one part here that we did, and put it where it's gonna go. Get it into position there. And now we got to secure these down. So we've got our securing parts and our, of course, our AP screws. Now these are not all the same as the one part was. So the first part we're going to work with is this one. And the way they want us to do this one is it's going to go on to the back like this. So this flat piece sticks up. And we're going to go ahead and secure that down first with a pair of our AP screws. Now our next one is this piece, and it's going to go on like this onto this end. Again, securing it down with the AP screws. And with that on, we got these two sections where you can see there's a little groove, so obviously fit those over your wing propellers, and again secure them down with your AP screws. Now with those in place, we got to make sure everything's still working. Now if we do this right, you will really get to see that when we go forward, all three of these are going to turn. And when we go back, the central one will not be turning. So here's, I believe, forward. And full astern! How very cool that is. Now you may think we're done with this stage, but we're not. We got one thing to do, and for that we need our entire bow section. So get that and I'll meet you back here. So our final step for stage 4, for this stage, for stage 40, is, of course, we're going to add the second anchor to this. So just like before, it's going to do that. We're going to do it the same way. We're going to bring it into the hole, and it's going to go down and in. Definitely going to want to get a pair of tweezers because, again, getting this thing into the hole is very tricky. Take your tweezers. Grab it if you can. We're going to pull it through. I'm going to get it where I want it. And just like before, we're going to go down and we're going to connect it to the winch. Again, I do not usually put jewelry on, you can tell. Alright, there. I got them both into place. Now you just want to make sure that these are right where you want them. So like that. Now this piece is if you need to adjust where you're positioning it. If you want them up closer to come in closer, if one's not coming in as far as it should. This is basically meant to go in between the links, and then you can shorten it up. So now, if we pull these down, they should both come back up. And again, that's assuming you want your anchors to be coming in and out. Like I say, I'm probably not really going to do that with mine. So mine are just going to kind of be where they're supposed to be and sitting there just right. So once you get the anchor in and you get everything working the way you want it to, after that in the engine room, that is it for stage 40. And before we move on to our next stage, so how many bodies was it necessary to bury at sea from the Mackie Bennett? Was it A, 85, B, 116, or C, 206? And the answer, of course, is B, 116 bodies. They basically buried at sea any bodies that they couldn't identify for whatever reason. So basically, the ones that got unidentified, it was cataloged and buried at sea. So here we are, we're taking a look at stage 41, and this is obviously the first part of the boat deck. Before we get on to this part, though, our next Titanic trivia question: what famous journalist who was a passenger described the ship as, quote, a monstrous floating Babylon? No multiple choice here. This is gonna be one you have to research yourself and find out. But we'll give you that answer at stage 42. So we gotta talk about this section of the boat deck here, because we have a lot of stuff we're gonna have to modify on this for a few reasons. First off, we look on the bottom, we're gonna have to cut these stairs off because I'm using the stairs from the KA kit, which look a lot better than the stairs on this. On the bottom side also, we're going to have to make sure that these sections here and in the front here are as smooth as can be. And the reason for that is there's parts I'm getting from Woody's Model Works that's going to add the beams that are over this deck, because you got to figure the boat deck sits above a deck. And A deck has a promenade that people would walk around, but there's beams on the ceiling above that. So the thing I'm getting from Woody's Model Works is going to add those beams to the section here, to the underside of the boat deck. But obviously, in order to put those on, this section of the boat deck needs to be relatively smooth. So we're going to have to work on that. On the top part, we're going to have a few things we're going to have to do. First off, I'm going to be taking this part off here. Now, why is that? Because obviously that's your guiding point for the wheelhouse. Which, if we get our part for that for a minute here, you can see it's supposed to sit on there and kind of guide itself in. But the fine folks over at China 3D have a different wheelhouse which I plan on using. It's this one here, and it's very hard to show you some of the details, but when you compare, even with my modifications on this one, when you compare the details in this to what we get in the kit, in this kit, there's no real contest. I mean, again, it's really hard to show you on this, but I mean, you can see I'll show you some pictures of it while I'm talking about it, but you can see the roof beams, and there's little details in here. The railings actually kind of come off the side of the doors. The doors have high details. It's just more highly detailed than the part we get. So, I'm going to be replacing it. The only bad part is this model was made... Hang on. So the only bad part is that this model was actually designed with the thought that you would be able to take the top of the bridge off. So when you're displaying it, I'm getting a part from another section, but when you would display it, you know, you could have that on there like that, and then you'd have another part that's going to sit in the front of here. But if you want to take it off and look inside, you can take it off and look inside the wheelhouse and the bridge. But obviously, you can see from this piece, that's not going to be a possibility. So, unfortunately, the only way we're going to see in here is you're going to have to actually get down in there and look. But you know what? I'm going for high detail on this. I'm going for accuracy, and let's face it, this with all its little details, like you could see the wood paneling on the outside of that. I mean, there's just no contest. The wood paneling on the outside, the detailed parts, there's just no contest here. So we're definitely using this piece. But in order to do that, if we look, we have to be careful because this is not designed with the thought of going around this section. Maybe if you toy with it a little bit, you could do it, but it's not designed for that. It's designed to sit right on the deck flush. And it's important that you get the dimensions of this right, because when we put the bridge section on in the front, it's got to line up, because remember, this section here connects to where the bridge is going to connect. So, where the bridge wings are going to connect. So, long and short, we got to take this section off here. This piece we can leave because that's going to help us line up our decking as well as our officers' quarters section. We're going to have to take these off because I'll show you in the next stage I'm doing something special with the bridge wings, and I'm going to explain what it is. And I'm also going to remove the chocks on these because I'm going to use the ones that come in the KA kit, and I'm going to actually put them onto the lifeboats to make it fit better. So all we're going to do is we're going to take measurements of how far apart these are so we can fit them the right way to the chocks on our lifeboats. So obviously by now you know how to do this. We're going to take our chisel blade, scrape everything off, smooth it out, and come back and we'll continue. Now, the first part of these instructions we are going to skip because if you look at because first of all, we've already shaved off all the chocks and everything that we wanted to do. We smoothed it out to make it easier for our parts to come in at later. Now, one thing you will notice is we're going to be skipping a lot of the directions here because The directions at this point call for taking lights and putting them through these channels onto the underside of the ship. But as I said, we're doing something different with our lighting, so we are not going to do that. So we're going to skip all that and go right on. We're going to go right on to putting our decking on. I broke mine into a few pieces to make this a little easier for me to do. You don't have to do this. So first we're going to start with our bridge section. Now, if you're doing it this way, you will want your bridge section to line up with the edge. Do not, I repeat, you will be tempted to do it, but I'm going to repeat it again and again. Do not push this section to the back here. To rest against this. Why? Because later, when you go to put your, your officers' quarters area on, that's the to guide those in, and this would be in front of it. So you can see how if you do put this up to the back, to match the grooves, you'll actually be putting it too far. So you can see right here, it goes right to the lip. So that's how we're going to do it. I know it's been a little while, but we're going to put a little bit of our wood glue. Well, first we're going to make sure we mark off where it goes, because there's a lot of stuff here you don't want to put too much glue on. So yeah. Okay, so we're going to put our wood glue. I'm just going to start with a little dabble right here. Remember, we don't want to go too overboard with it. You just want a thin layer. We're going to go all the way out. These edges here. And in this case, do not worry about covering these holes, because again, we're not using the holes. Okay, now we're going to start off by just lining up the front piece here. We want to get it lined up to the curve. And we're going to lay the whole, we're going to be able to move it around just a bit here and lay everything down where it's going to go. Rub it down, rub it down. Don't be afraid to get a little more in the corners if you need to. And then I'm going to put a little bit more on the undersides here, because I don't really have these glued down too good. Alright, now technically that ends this stage according to the instructions, but we're going to go a little further and we're going to put on these pieces. Now, why did I take these off? Well, because as they sit originally, they don't exactly go all the way out to the edge the way they need to, because again, we need to make sure we have a space in here for the officers' quarters area. So I cut mine apart, and we're going to glue them on. Forgot to actually take off the paper back there. No wonder it was having a hard time sticking down. Alright, and there we go. We got our wood deck piece on here. It's a little more than what the instructions would call for. I am going to go and fix up a couple of small areas because I'm not using a piece of the wood decking, so I can use it to fix up these little spots here that need a touch up. But I'm going to go do that off camera. So for right now, that is the end of stage 41. So we're here at stage 42, which is going to begin the bridge. And we're going to have a big talk about this section. I thought of making this its own separate video, but I'm going to try to do it in one. Now, this bridge here, there's nothing technically wrong per se. If you're just doing some of the model stock, and, you know, even if you just did, like, the China 3D, you know, wheelhouse because it just looks better, you would be fine doing that. It will work pretty nicely actually on there. It's a little tough to show it because this bridge doesn't exactly sit flat, but you can see it'll work nice. It'll fit there, it'll look nice, and it'll work really good on that. But if you're gonna go and get this from China 3D, you might as well go all out and get this section. Now, because of how these China 3D pieces are, we're going to be basically jumping around, combining stages, and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So these next couple of stages, I'm going to try to follow the instructions, but we're going to be going flip-flopping and doing a lot of stuff because this is going to require a lot of modification. So one thing you'll notice right off the bat is first of all, I already took off this section of the China 3D bridge. It is very delicate work. There is a very lot of tiny details to make sure that you don't want to cut through. So a heated blade, lots of patience, and even your, you know, magnifying glasses, highly recommended for this. So one of the things you'll notice right off the bat is that the China 3D print has the side windows. Basically, we get these in stage 43, and they just kind of attach in the deck onto, so they kind of attach, if you're following the stock instructions, these would go in a couple of holes on the boat deck. Obviously, we don't need that. Now, this print comes with a lot of stuff. First of all, I'm going to try to show you in there. Look at all the little details on there. You can see like the wood paneling, some of the mechanical parts. This section has these, the wings have these parts that come down, they'll step up, that this is all missing. Now, the KA kit comes with all this, so you could technically file these down, add that in, and you'd be good to go. But one of the other problems that we're gonna run into if we're, if we're not doing the whole stock section is with the wings. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you put the wings from the next stage on here where they go, they look great, except they close this section off. Now, there's a very good reason for them to close that off. Because if we're following the stock instructions, let me see if I can show you here. The lights for the lights that go to the, what's it called? The running lights on the sides are going to sit in there on the boat deck. So you have the boat deck kind of sitting, so it'll be like, it's kind of like this. You have the light, you have this on your boat deck, the light is sitting in there. Try to get this turned the right way here to show you this. So this is in your boat deck and the light's underneath it. Now, it's meant to shine through here and light a part that we're going to get in a little bit here to put on. And that's how it's meant to light up the running lights. And because of that, they don't want any light to bleed through, so they kind of enclose everything off, including the sides. But our wings aren't going to do that. You can see here, our wings are going to be wide open. So number one, that means we're going to have to figure out something else to do with the lights so that we can get the formation lights on here. Got a couple ideas. We're going to try them out and see what we can figure out. We also got these things, these window shutters, which go onto this part here. Now, one part of this that's kind of a little iffy is the fact that the wings, like these sections here, are two separate pieces from this. So you're gonna have to take them off of here and kind of glue them together separately. And then, of course, we gotta paint them all white. But if you take this and combine it with the China 3D wheelhouse, I mean, that just fits together even all the more better. And it's a very nice, good fit. Like, you can't possibly mess that up. So, like I say, if you're gonna go China 3D, you might as well go all out. One other piece you might consider, and you might consider getting this even if you decide to use the KA kit for all of these parts, you may consider getting Deck Bits 1, because this has a lot of parts that you might want to use. It has all the parts for the bridge, so you have the telemotors, the wheels, the compasses, you have the Pelorises, you have all that stuff on here. You also got some stuff for the forecastle and poop deck areas. You got these cargo hatches for the poop deck. You have these winch covers. You have that part for the officers for that one like skylight. You have extra valves which will come in handy if you lose any of the KA ones. And they give you plenty of spares here. So, you know, it's definitely worth the investment if you want to go this route, because if you're going to go the whole route of getting all the bridge parts anyway, why not complete the ensemble and get the really nice parts here? Now we're going to talk about how to extract these sides, because they are very delicate. There are sections right here where you can see that there are very thin, delicate parts that you have to take off carefully. So to do this, the way I recommend you start is with the blade just heat it up a little bit with a lighter or a candle or whatever you want to use to heat it up. And then while it's still hot, just gently press it up against that. You might not get it on the first try. Take your time, because these are very sensitive parts. You don't want to lose any of them. If you do, you might be able to use your K8 kit parts to kind of repair it, but why repair if you don't have to? I'm going to start with these delicate sections. Also, when you get this, it does come with life preservers here. Basically, these kinds of life preservers. It comes with a whole bunch of them here and on the inside. So, my recommendation to you is just kind of take them all off of here first. Put them off to the side, keep them safe, and then start cutting pieces off. And then, of course, when you get the bridge piece off, the front part of the bridge piece, just take off everything on the side so that it doesn't get in your way. And also, don't try to force it, because if you force it, you're gonna break it. If your blade doesn't seem like it's cutting easily and it's not, then you obviously don't have it hot enough. So just kind of reheat your blade and try again. Again, the key with this is going to be patience. Then once you successfully get those off, it's just a matter of you're going to go around and start taking off. First of all, start taking off these parts that are kind of on and in the way here. Like you can see these sections down here that are kind of just in the way. Get those off, get those out of the way first. And then we're just going to go through and start cutting off right along the edge here. And again, just take your time and don't rush through, and always make sure you're using a really hot blade. Use a hot blade, it'll cut through it just like butter. Okay, so we got that off more or less intact. We lost one of the little things here, but we did get it off. Now, we will join these together manually. So what you're going to look for to help guide you, the easiest way, get a flat surface. Make sure you got a nice level surface to work on. So my table here isn't totally level, so let's see if we can maybe use this. Because if you can get a level surface, you have this little section right in here that'll match that little section right in there. So this is a section where you would get your glue, kind of glue it down. But first you want to file off these little burrs. So now we got our burrs filed off. We're going to go ahead and glue this piece to our bridge wing. Once you're happy with how it's in place, let it sit and dry. This would be a good time to take off your other wing. We're going to put that on, and then we'll talk about what we do next. Okay, so once we got those on, you can see how really beautiful that looks now. You can see all the way in there. So that's going to look really great. So our next step is we're going to let that glue set fully on there, and then we're going to paint the whole thing white because that's what color obviously the bridge is. But now that you got the two wings together, you can really see how similar and yet different they are. So we're going to let this set. Then I'm also going to go over a few things in this. So like I said, you got the shutters that are going to go on the inside. They also got the two desks that go into the inside the wheelhouse. I'll put a picture of that right up here. And some other little bits and bobs for the purposes of the bridge. So lots of stuff to color and decorate. But once this is all done and put together, I mean, you can see how nice that's going to look. And all the details that you're going to have on this, they're just really going to pop and make your model look so much more realistic. Even though, like I said in a prior stage, we are going to be precluded from actually doing like the base model is, which is taking the roof off and being able to look in here. If you're adventurous enough and you think you've got what it takes to cut this roof off of here, more power to you. I know I'm not that good and I don't have that skill level, so I'm not going to even try to do that. But again, if you have that skill and you can do it, more power to you. So we're going to come back when these are all painted up and continue on. So once they're all taken out and painted, this is kind of what you should have for your bridge here. We got our nice, interior all done. You got your bridge all good. We will talk about the wires coming out of it later, but that's how it should look on there. And then the wheelhouse, obviously we got a lot of details kind of picked out on it there. And I mean, this was a lot of detailed, delicate work. I skipped over a ton of it. I will definitely, but this is definitely worth it. You can definitely see the detail in these compared to the detail in the piece you get. Even if you want to use the KA kit, the detail on this is still going to be much better. So I mean, you technically could take... You could definitely take this bridge piece, paint it up, shave all this stuff off the back here, and spend time and effort painstakingly putting the detail work from the KA kit, which I will show in the corner up here, and just getting all that on there. But if you go to the China 3D route, we have that. You can do this. But for right now, again, I do know that there's wires coming out of this. You're probably wondering about that. We will discuss the wires on the next section. Because for now... So as we press on with our bridge, we're going to have to take a moment to talk about lighting. Now, as I mentioned when we were putting the deck on, this is the light that comes with the bridge that they want you to use. I'm turning it over to show you how they plan to do it. Now, as you see in the instructions, which I'm going to show you right now, your light would basically sit in here. Be flipped over actually, so it kind of sit like this and then get completely encased, so all the light that this generates would go out this hole to light the side panels. But since we're doing the modified bridge, that doesn't work. You see, I've already got these wires here. I'm going to explain them now. So we have to find a way to light this, and I came up with a solution that does require a little bit of electric work. So if you're not comfortable with this, definitely consider what you got to do, because you might lose your ability to light the side if you go with the China 3D bridge. So if we bring our battery pack, our tester pack over here, obviously, you know, we plug this in, we got a light. It lights up, okay? Now, what I'm doing is I'm basically, and I've already tested this so it will work, is I've cut off the tip of this. So now we've got this thing with no light in it. Now it's plugged into the battery pack. I bought a bunch of these and another type of micro LEDs. These are very small, delicate LEDs that are ready to be attached to things. And if we can connect them, luckily the colors work the same. So if we go red to red, try to show you this here, and then we get the black to connect to the black. We get light. So what we'll be able to do is, if you drill out a very small hole into the part with the light here, where the light goes, we'll have this to run down into the ship. So if I get our boat deck over here for just a second to show you, one good part about where I've got these drilled out is if we put the bridge part onto the deck real quick and flip it over, there just so happens to be enough of a groove right there for your wires to come out. Now keep in mind, there will be a circuit board in the middle here. We'll get to that in a little bit. But there's going to be a circuit board right here that we're going to connect to. So we're going to end up shortening these wires up and probably soldering them together so that they stick. But it will work. So we will be able to do this and get lights where we wouldn't normally have them. So with all that segue out of the way for the bridge, let's get on to stage 42. So stage 42 is going to begin by attaching our bridge. Now, they tell you to screw it in and everything, but obviously we can't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue it down, but we're going to glue it down in stages. So for stage 1 of gluing it down, I recommend we start with the very front part of this, and where we're gonna put the glue right on the edge here. And once we got the glue on there, we'll take our bridge and you're gonna cover the part and make sure you get it straight. And push it all the way down. You'll be able to tell it's... I'll try to tilt it down to show you. You can tell with the curve if you got it right. Now we're just going to let that set up for a minute. Now keep in mind, if you're following the instructions, you will not have these or these attached, but ours will be, so we're gonna have to glue those down as well at some point. We're starting with the outer part of the bridge first. Now that that's set, we're gonna pick a side, and you're just gonna kind of run your glue inside there, and we're just gonna get one side to glue down. And again, I'm spreading mine on the boat deck part of the ship. As opposed to the bridge part. So we got that in. If you're doing the wires, make sure you get your wires through your little hole here. And we're going to hold this in place. And once you're satisfied with how that's set, do the other side. Get that on there. Again, if you're wiring yours differently than if you're doing the China 3D wiring and stuff, just make sure you get your wires where they need to go. Get your part in there right. Hold it in for a moment so give it a chance to set. And then voila, the bridge is set in place. Now we're gonna just get these glued down. The wings will get glued down real quick. Alright, so our bridge is attached to the Titanic. Now, we're going to talk about what's supposed to go in here, because if you look at your instructions, it's just plain wood flooring, but that is not the type of flooring that was used in that section of the ship. So the actual floor for both the wheelhouse and the officers' quarters hallway was a red pattern floor, which I will provide a link for. It is part of the Trumpeter 3D group, so make sure you definitely, if you aren't a member with them yet, they got some great resources for this, so definitely check them out. This is just one of the many things you can print this and then cut it to fit. I basically made it fit this entire interior section here because the officers' quarters floor is the same tile floors as this. So when it's all said and done, it'll all work right. And we're not really doing anything under this with these things, so we should be able to do this. Actually, I lied. We're gonna skip ahead to one thing from stage 43 real quick. And we're going to actually put in the circuit board because we all know how fun these clips are, and we don't want to, and we won't be able to get to them from the top, so we want to do this easily. So now, just like every other board piece, this does have a direction it can go in. It does kind of groove it for you, so it's just a matter of clipping it into place carefully. Just like that. Make sure you use something to pry those open and get them in place. And for God's sakes, if you're doing this bridge the way I am, don't hold it by the bridge. Hold it by the boat deck. Hold it by anything other than the bridge, because the last thing you want to have happen is for that piece to break, because that is a very delicate piece of work. But now that we got the circuit board in, we can safely now put the piece on here. So put the, tile floor down. Just like we do with any decking, we're going to get our wood glue or PVA glue, basically. Whatever you use. I mean, this glue works just fine for paper as well as wood. So we're going to spread it out all around on the inside here. You've got one nice even layer. Just start with the back, because you can put it right up to the edge, and start pressing it down. There we go. got that into place. Now, while we let that sit and dry for just a moment, we're going to take a look at some deck bits that you can get from China 3D and compare them against what you get in this kit. So here we have all the bridge parts that we would need from China 3D, and I'll tell you, compare them to the regular parts and there's just no comparison. I mean, this right here, it's going to be tough to show you, but this is the ship's compass that you get from this. Compare it with that one there with all the detail work, and there's really no competition here. As always, China 3D does a really bang-up job giving you top value for your dollar and giving you the ability to get the parts you want and make them look as good as you want. So now the first things we're going to put on the telemotors. Now, if you're using the KA kit, they luckily have very faint, but they're there, holes or markings to show you where these telemotors go. So we're going to very gently... Now, 2 of the telemotors that are used have a very special part to them. It's like a little indicator. That goes on the ones on either end. It's a speed indicator. And the speed indicator, it's going to be very tough to show you. It's almost going to be impossible, but it just looks like another hole there. Another little hole thing. So the ones with the speed indicator go on either side of the bridge. Then your other telemotor with the direction indicator on it. I'm gonna go there. So once we got those 2 in place, there's 3 more telemotors that go in. With the China 3D parts, there is a little box on the back, so I'm guessing based on those other 2, on the 2 with the indicators on the front, the boxes go in the back. So we're going to put all those going in that way. I have to make 2 more because I messed up a little bit and did the wrong one, so I have to make the next couple. Now this next part, we're gonna kind of go out of order here because the next part, they would have you put these in with the pegs, but we're not using the pegs. So our next piece we're gonna put in is called a binnacle. And if you painted the China 3D ones, you're going to have a red ball and a blue ball, or a red ball and a green ball put on. And they go the same direction as the red and green running lights on your ship. We're going to do the forward binnacle into this square right here. Now, I hear you asking yourselves, how are we going to put... It's all well and good to put these pieces in here because they have markings where they go. But we don't have any markings here, so how are we going to fit in what we need to fit in? Well, if we look at our wheelhouse for a minute, it is perfectly, if you cut it right, it will be perfectly shaped to that rug or to that tile floor. Now that's important because we can use something you get with the China 3D bridge parts. They come with these desks or tables or something. I don't know what they are technically. If someone does, feel free to comment. But they fit in perfectly on either side. And the piece with the binnacle and the wheel fits perfectly right in between them. So we get these down first, and then we'll be able to put the rest down. And again, this is a very particular detail that might or might not get seen because, again, I'm not crafty enough to take the roof of this bridge, of this wheelhouse off. If you're crafty enough and you want to try it and you think you can do it, be my guest. I wish you the best of luck on that. I personally, I know my limitations and I know I can't do it, so I don't even want to risk trying it because this piece is too beautiful to risk on a lark. There we go. So now we got those into place. We're just going to do another little test fit. Hold on. Okay, so I had to adjust them a little bit because you have to be able to fit the wheelhouse over them. And if you can see in there, they should go right up against the side walls on both sides. But now that we got that in there, we'll be able to put on this set of steering wheel. Now, they've got that as two separate parts, a binnacle and a ship's wheel, but it was actually just like this, one solid part that we put on. Once again, we're going to kind of line this up carefully. And go right in the center of these. Just like that. And we'll do another test fit just to make sure that everything's fitting the right way. And you can see it is. Now that we got that on there, we can put the stand that they were asking us to put on before. Now naturally, I'm not using their stand for this one. I'm using the stands that come with the KA set, which are basically you just paint them, fold them, and glue them. So just like that. Now, the next wheel is just a plain old wheel. And it's gonna sit just slightly in front here. So yeah, we're gonna be just putting it slightly in line with this wheel. This is the one that Andrew said they really only use near shore, if you remember your movie. It's also going to be really tricky to get in here. You know, there's really no marking on this to tell you where to go. Just kind of use your judgment. We're going kind of close to the binnacle, but not super close. But it wouldn't be so close to the wheelhouse that no one could walk through the bridge. So I'm going to say right about there. We're going to straighten it out. Yep, like that. And now with that down, we're going to put our other stand on. Now, they would have you put the posts in, but obviously the posts are on that section, so we won't have to worry about that. So the last things we gotta put on, these are called the Propellers. And they basically sit on the outside of the bridge, and these are basically I did some research on them. They're like manual compasses. They basically sit in a certain way, and you can use them in situations where you might not necessarily be able to use a regular compass. You can at least be able to call out degrees. So it'll be like you're standing at this side of the bridge and you see something out there. You can say it's 10 degrees to starboard or something. But just like everything else, there are a couple of squares that mark where they go. We're just going to put them in place. And I think the plural is Propellers, but I could not confirm or deny that. But there's one on either side of the bridge. And there we go. So once we got everything in position, like I said, I gotta go make a couple more of those telemotors because I didn't make the right ones. I messed up a little bit, so I have to fix that up. But beyond that, that is all there is to do in this stage. A lot of detail work, a lot of big stuff coming together. But this stage is now done. And now, before we go on to stage 43, we need to answer our next Titanic trivia question. What famous journalist, who was also a passenger, described the ship as, quote, a monstrous floating Babylon? The answer is William T. Stead. Or Stead. I don't know if it's Stead or Stead, but I think it's Stead. He's the one who called her a monstrous floating Babylon. So here we are at the start of stage 43, and I'm gonna be honest with you, because of all the modifications I've been doing, we're not gonna really have a lot to actually do on this stage, but we are still gonna have some things we have to talk about. But before we do that, though, our next Titanic trivia question is, what was the fee for using the Titanic's Turkish bath? Was it A, $1, B, $5, or C, $10? You'll get your answer at the end of stage 44. So, if we were using the stock instructions, we would be putting these parts of the bridge on, minus these things here, on either side. And there's something that goes on top of these things, which I will be adding later, but I don't want to do it right now for a couple of reasons. And we would also be adding the bridge wings on, which, of course, we've already done. So, we're already done with that set. The bulk of this stage, however, deals with what goes on underneath. Now you can see I've already got I've done all the stuff on this. Now I'm going to explain to you guys what I did. So if you remember, I said we should probably put this in the last stage because of us putting on the carpet, the tile work for the floor on here. This stage would have you plugging in the lights that normally you would have running out from under here and plugging them into this board, and then the board would light up. But since I did the bridge with the special China 3D printed parts, I had to be a little creative. So on either side of the bridge, I drilled out a very small 1mm hole. And I purchased a bunch of these micro LEDs. They are very small, like it's very tough to show you here, but they do fit perfectly right where the holes were. And then, as I mentioned, I fed them through these little channels here, and then I had to groove them into this. Now, I used the existing plugins to get these to work. So what I ended up doing was cutting and stripping the lights off of these two connectors and soldering the connections red to red, black to black. Now when you're using these, it's very tricky to do. So what you want to do is you would take the easiest way to get the wire exposed, because unless you're actually using it right on the tip here, you're going to need to expose the wire because you don't want to have a ton of this floating around. So what you do is you get a section of your wire out, and obviously it would be held down. My soldering iron is not on right now, obviously. But you would take a section of your wire and just run your soldering iron over till you melt the plastic and expose the wire. Now, it's important to note that this wire is very thin, so I would not recommend trying to cut anything out of it. Otherwise, you'll run the risk of actually clipping your wire. And as always, test, because I had a problem with this bulb here, where when I plugged it in and hooked everything up, the entire lights just went out. But if done right, you'll have this end plugged in here, and if we plug it in and everything works right, and there you go, your red light and your green light. Now, if these lights are a little too bright, what I would recommend doing, and what I did do, take a bit of the paint that you use to, you know, make your lights, or to make your boxes for your lights, and just paint your light that color, and it'll dull the color a little bit. One other thing that we're going to probably take advantage of is you'll notice all these ports have exposed, basically an exposed section. If we take our micro LEDs, I don't know if we're going to be able to show this, but if we take our micro LED like this, and we connect our red to the positive, and our black to the negative, we should get a light, and we do. I'll try to show that to you again. We got the red connected to the positive. We bring the black to the negative. It's very hard to do this. But if it's done right, if we were to solder this to this, we could get lighting in any section of the ship that we want. Now, what's that going to mean for us? Well, I've got some I-beams coming that might use some of these lights as a way to kind of light things up, and it'll be nice to be able to connect them and create circuits out of these sections, so that we don't have to worry about additional power supplies. Because keep in mind, we want to be able to close all this off eventually, and we don't want to have to find a way to leave something open to change out batteries. So, once we get to the parts here, we will be talking about everything else with this kit. But the important thing to note is that these will work if you solder them correctly. And I'll leave a link to the lights I've used for this in the description below. And if you want to take your stab at them, it's really not that tough if you know, take your time and figure out what you're doing. And it really adds a little bit to the ship, I think, and it really gives you a lot of leeway to do some work on this. But once all the lights are working and everything's good, I mean, that is really it for this whole stage, which, as you can imagine, means we pretty much did most of this in previous stages. The biggest part, like I said, was working with the lights, and, well, I'm probably going to do an entire video on that when I do more work with more of the lighting, so something to look forward to on that front. So with that, let's move on to stage 44. So now we're starting stage 44, and we got this bit of the boat deck to add on to our first set, which is going to expand it. Now, first of all, I did take off the stairs to this because obviously we're going to use the KA stairs. We're going to have to do this in a little bit of a different order because if we were to go ahead and use their deck pieces, they fit perfectly in there, just like that. But since we're using the KA set, you will notice they don't exactly fit perfect, and if I look over here, there's an overhang. That overhang is going to go onto the front section of the boat deck. So with that being the case, our first step is going to be to attach this to the front part of our boat deck. And to do that, we have this middle section here. You have the pegs. There's 2 pegs on the bottom here. And they're going to connect right to there. And we're going to carefully flip this over. We're going to connect it with a pair of AP screws. And with those in place, to add a little extra support, they give you these pieces here. They're just going to fit right in to these brackets right here. They do want you to glue these in place, so get that piece out. They do want you to put these in with glue, so let's go ahead and do that. Give that a moment, give that a couple moments to set up, and then we'll continue on with the next part of this build. So with the glue set on that, let's take a look at how these are going to lie on here. So first of all, we are going to go right to the edge of the deck. So yes, you will see that it is not going to exactly line up, but again, we want to have a little groove because parts from the housing we're going to be putting on the deck are going to be going on there. So we do want to leave a little bit of a gap to help that along. One important thing to note is even though we've gone ahead and we're doing it this way, this part's still going to have some overhang. So when we go to take this piece off, we want to make sure we keep this covered so we don't mess anything up. So we're going to take care of that too. So naturally, the first thing we're going to do is, just like with all of our other parts, all of our other wood decking, we're going to spread some wood glue right along where we want it. Not a ton, but enough. Once we got that in its proper position, once we got enough glue on that, as always, getting the backing off of this is a pain. And I've removed all but the last little bit of backing, so we remove all the backing here for right now, for the moment. Put our piece down. Now remember, you want to line it up as best you can with the edge of the boat deck. And flatten it out. Try to get it all the way pressed down. And then what we're going to do for this back piece is we're just going to take, I'm going to take my piece of plastic, here are scissors, I'm just going to cut out the little section that is still uncovered and just slap it right back on there. And this way you'll keep this you'll keep the pieces protected until we get the next continuation of our deck. So now, of course, got this opposite side to do. So same thing as before, we're gonna put our glue down and then put our deck down. And there we are, once we're satisfied with how that looks. We're going to take our wood decking and we're going to put it into place. And then this back piece, just because it's got that little fork piece on it, I'm just going to take a section of the plastic and cover the whole thing up. And again, this is just to keep the glue from getting bad and to add a little extra protection to it. Now, you might notice we have a lot of empty spaces. Well, it should come as no surprise. But just like before, we have some KA photo etch parts to put in. Now these will be parts where wrenches or where winches and things go. So the first part we're going to put in is T23, and it goes right in here, right along there. Get it right up to the edge there. There we go. Next, we've got T15. which is a real small one. You really got to kind of look at the directions, but if you look at this piece, it's hard to show it on here, but there's a little box above the T. The box goes towards the stern. It's going to fit right into there. And then next we got T13, which is going to go on this side. And it goes to where the box part, it's a similar piece, it goes to where the box part comes towards this side. So like that. And that is it for the pieces we're going to be putting on here, because we don't have any more that goes back here yet. But now we got these two sections to worry about. And I hear what you're saying. Shouldn't there be something there? Well, there is. For that, we need to get our S sheet. And if you don't know which sheet S is, it's the really thick piece of photo etch. And these two things are basically the expansion joint again, which you remember we did on top of our officers' quarters. You'll need both S23s. And again, they stay bronze, so you don't have to do anything to them. Because we didn't get any glue in those sections, we'll go ahead and nail that. We'll go ahead and put that down with some good old-fashioned CA glue. There you go. Now that section of the boat deck is done. We're going to go put that away. And we're going to do something with our officers' quarters and grand staircase sections. So go grab that and I'll meet you back here. So the final part of this stage is actually kind of exciting. We're actually going to finally put together the two sections of this that we've had, that we've kind of had just sitting around doing nothing. Well, they haven't been doing nothing. They've just been kind of sitting here detached from each other. We're finally going to get to attach them together. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go on the sides. I mean, obviously you can tell how these are going to go. You got a groove there and they fit in. It's going to fit in just like that. And then these are going to be held into place with a pair of the GP screws. These are these flanged screws you get in this pack. Very short and stubby flange screws, which is probably why we haven't been able to do this until now. With that done, they're finally attached to each other. So now we've gotten to the end of this stage. Can we just take a moment and just gaze at everything we've accomplished here so far to this stage, this build? I mean, goodness, we finished up the engine room, and then we got all this done. We got all the bridge, the boat deck. We're starting to work on the lighting. We're putting the decking down on the boat deck. We're actually expanding the boat deck. We got this section finally connected together so you can actually see what it looks like. We have working lights. So we've got quite a lot done here that is quite impressive. And even with all the modifications, the modifications just make it more impressive. So, you know, we can't deny it's been a long road, a lot of work, but the results, well, they clearly do speak for themselves. So that is it for stage 44. That is it for pack 8. And before we conclude our video here, what was the fee for using Titanic's Turkish bath? Was it A, $1, B, $5, or was it C, $10? And the answer was for the low price of A, $1. That's all it cost you to use the Turkish baths on the Titanic. So that's it for pack 8, and wow, what a lot we did on this. I mean, even if you're just doing the standard, pack model, it's still a lot of stuff done in a very short time. But when you take into account all the modifications we've done and all the, extra steps we've taken to make our model look good, I'm sure you'll agree this is a great stopping point for right now, because this was a lot of work to do, but the results are definitely worth it. So, I hope you enjoyed your build. I hope you enjoyed doing what you did, and I hope that your model's starting to turn out the way you want it to, because that's the big thing about building models, is the most important thing is that you're happy with it. Not me, not anyone else. All that really matters is how you feel about your model and if you're happy with it. So that was our episode for today. Before we leave, I'm going to leave you with our last Titanic trivia question. What is the grave number of the last Titanic victim to be found? Is it A, 227, B, 249, C, 308, or D, 330? And of course, the answer to that question and our next section of the boat deck, which is what's coming up, will be coming to you next time on the Model Frontier.